7 months ago, I discovered that my neighbor wasn't running away from home. She was running away from herself. My name's Henry. I'm 72 years old, and I live alone in a house that was once filled with laughter, but now only echoes the sound of the TV turned on more for company than for actually watching. It's been 3 years since my Margaret passed away, and since then, sleep's become a rare visitor. It's not that I don't get tired. It's that the silence of the night brings memories we'd rather not face. It was on one of those sleepless nights that it all began. January of this year, right at the start of the new year. I was lying there in bed, scrolling through my phone, trying to tire my eyes when I heard something unusual. 3 in the morning, always at the same time. Eleanor's house, my neighbor out back, would light up slowly, like someone was afraid of waking the world. Eleanor had always been a woman of few words, a widow like me, but she'd been alone much longer. Raised 2 kids working as a seamstress. We'd wave at each other by the mailbox, exchange a few words at the supermarket, but we never really talked much. Just neighbor stuff, you know how it is. But that sound had something strange about it. I got up from bed and went to the window. Through the gap in the curtain, I could see a shadow moving around inside. Then came the creaking of that back door, a sound I knew well because my own door made the same noise when the weather got humid. Eleanor always left with a canvas tote bag, one of those old, worn bags that women our age use to carry things around. She'd walk fast, looking over her shoulder like she was scared of being seen, and she always came back at dawn when the birds started waking up. At first I thought, must be work, maybe cleaning somewhere, one of those companies that run night shifts. But no, the way she moved wasn't like someone heading to work. It was like someone fulfilling an obligation that nobody could know about. All of January passed like that. Me there with my insomnia watching that silent routine. Every single day, 3 in the morning, same thing. Saturday, Sunday, didn't matter. Eleanor would leave with that bag and come back tired, sometimes with red-rimmed eyes. It was in February that curiosity got the better of me. If you've got a similar story, or know someone who's been through something like this, hit that like button so more folks can hear this. Sometimes we need to know we're not walking this path alone. On a Monday that was particularly warm, I threw on my oldest shirt, grabbed my walking cane, which I use for longer walks because of my bum knee, and decided to figure out what was going on. Following her wasn't easy. Eleanor might be 68, but she walks like a woman half her age. There I was, trying not to make noise with my cane on the pavement, scared to death of getting caught. She walked 3 blocks, turned 2 corners, and stopped at this simple little house in a neighborhood I didn't know too well. The house was small, kind of run down, with a little sign by the door. Sunrise Home Care, Nursing Services. Eleanor pulled out a ring of keys tied with string from her pocket and walked right in like she owned the place. I ducked behind a tree, feeling pretty foolish, a 72-year-old man playing detective. But curiosity was stronger than embarrassment. Through the half-open window, I could make out what was happening inside. Eleanor was taking care of a man, a real thin fellow lying in a regular bed. Wasn't a hospital bed, just a regular one with those safety rails. From his slow movements, you could tell he was pretty sick. She fluffed his pillow, gave him some water, spoke real soft. Couldn't hear what she was saying, but her tone was like someone who'd known this person for years. I headed home with my head spinning with questions. Over the next few days, I started investigating, but it wasn't easy. It's not like in the movies where you ask around and everybody tells you everything. Had to be patient, ask questions without seeming too nosy. Started with Frank at the bakery. He's one of those guys who knows everybody, hears all the neighborhood gossip. But when I asked about that house, all he knew was that there's some caregivers over there, folks who look after sick people at home. Nothing too specific. Betty at the pharmacy was more helpful. She told me she knew the story roughly, said there was this real sick gentleman living there, family never visited, completely dependent on caregivers. But when I asked if she knew who he was, she said, "Oh, Henry, what I know is the man's name is Vincent. Had a terrible stroke about 8 months back. The woman living with him took off when she saw how bad things were getting. Since then, he's been completely dependent on others." Vincent. That name rang a bell, but I couldn't place it. It was Jimmy from the newsstand who solved the puzzle. Jimmy's got one of those elephant memories for this kind of thing. When I mentioned Vincent, He smacked his forehead. Wait a minute, Henry, isn't that Eleanor's ex-husband? The guy who walked out on her for some younger woman about 20 years ago? Then it all clicked into place. Vincent was the man Eleanor had loved, who'd helped raise her kids, who one day decided he was too old for a simple life but too young to die of boredom. He left his family to shack up with some woman much younger, one of those types who promise excitement and adventure. But time, like it always does, caught up with him. The younger woman found herself an even younger man. Vincent ended up alone, had a stroke that left him helpless, and with no family around, the kids cut him off when he abandoned their mother, and no money for private care. He was in a real desperate situation. Eleanor found out by accident, I learned later, was on a March afternoon when she went shopping at this discount market way across town. Ran into Mrs. Dorothy, who used to be her neighbor years back. Dorothy lived near the place where Vincent was staying. She filled Eleanor in on the situation, kind of griping about it. Can you believe it, Eleanor? That man's over there, abandoned. Nobody visits him. It's actually sad, but what can you do? You reap what you sow. Eleanor didn't say anything right then. But that very night she showed up there, and from then on she never stopped going. I pieced all this together bit by bit over 3 weeks, gathering scraps of conversation, watching, asking careful questions. And with each detail I learned, the more amazed I got by this woman. Eleanor was doing something most of us wouldn't have the guts to do. She was caring for someone who'd broken her heart, not out of love. She'd buried those feelings long ago, but for something rarer, harder to put into words, pure human decency. She was using her own pension money to buy his medicine, incontinence supplies, special food, made up excuses to her kids about extra expenses, bought some new arthritis medication, had to fix some roof tiles, electric bill was higher this month. Little white lies to support one big truth. She couldn't stand seeing anyone suffer, even someone who'd caused her so much pain. But heavy secrets always find their way out. It was on a Sunday in April when everything hit the fan. Michael, Eleanor's older boy, came by for his regular visit. He's a good son, the type who helps with groceries, fixes things around the house, checks if she needs anything. Eleanor had stepped out to get some bread, and Michael was poking around in a kitchen drawer looking for something. That's when he found the receipts. Pharmacy receipts with Vincent's name on them, receipts for incontinence supplies, medicine receipts for stuff his mother didn't take. All of it stored in a plastic baggie, folded neat, like it was important paperwork. When Eleanor got back with the fresh bread, she found Michael in the living room holding those papers, with a look she knew all too well. Same look he'd get as a kid when he discovered something he wasn't supposed to know about. "Mom, what's all this about?" Eleanor tried explaining, but her words came out all jumbled. "How do you tell your son you're spending money on the man who walked out on your family? How do you explain you're using your pension on someone who doesn't deserve your forgiveness?" "Son, it's complicated." "Complicated? Mom, you're spending money on that man, after everything he did to us." Michael wasn't just angry, he was hurt. Hurt that his mother had hidden this from him, hurt that he couldn't understand it, hurt because it felt like it made their family's suffering mean less. "It's not love, Michael. I don't have those feelings for him anymore. It's just, I can't watch anyone suffer. But Mom, you've got to think about yourself. What if you run out of money? What if you get sick? Who's going to take care of you?" The argument got heated. Michael said he was going to do something about it, wouldn't let his mother get taken advantage of like this. Eleanor cried, tried explaining she wasn't being taken advantage of, that she was doing this because she had to sleep at night. "I'm not going to stand for this anymore, Mom. Either you stop this craziness, or I'm going to have to take more serious action." "What kind of action, Michael?" "I'll find a lawyer, see about having you declared incompetent. You're not thinking straight about this." Eleanor stopped crying right then and there. She looked at her son with a hardness I'd never seen in her before. "Michael, I'm 68 years old. I raised 2 children by myself, worked my whole life. I pay my bills, keep my house, my mind's as sharp as ever. You're not going to have me committed or stop me from doing anything. Then you choose. Either quit this madness or I'll have to protect you from yourself." I heard every word from my backyard. These old houses have thin walls, voices were raised, and her window looks right out on my yard. I sat there in my old lawn chair, feeling my heart sink with every word. Funny how sometimes you see yourself in someone else's pain. Listening to that fight, I remembered all the times my own kids tried talking me out of caring for Margaret when she was sick. "Dad, you're going to make yourself sick too. Dad, hire a nurse. Dad, you can't handle this alone." But I did handle it. Did it because she was my wife, my responsibility, my love. And now I understood Eleanor was carrying something similar, only heavier. Because it wasn't duty, wasn't married love. It was something rarer, harder to explain. It was pure compassion. That night, Eleanor didn't make her usual trip. Stayed home, probably crying, thinking about Vincent alone without his medicine, without food, without anyone to help. And I stayed in my house, thinking about her, about him, about how life sometimes throws situations at you that don't come with instructions. Next morning, bright and early, I knocked on Eleanor's door. She answered with puffy eyes, looking worn out like someone who hadn't slept a wink. She seemed surprised to see me. After all, we'd never really had a proper conversation in all these years of being neighbors. "Mrs. Eleanor, you got a few minutes to talk?" She invited me in. House was simple, neat, full of pictures of her kids and grandkids. Would have seemed like a happy home if not for the heaviness hanging in the air. "I know about Vincent," I said straight out. "Know you've been going out every night to take care of him." Eleanor looked down like she'd been caught red-handed doing something wrong. "Mr. Henry, I can explain." "Don't need to explain anything. I want to help." She looked at me like she didn't understand. "Mrs. Eleanor, I lost my Margaret taking care of her right up to the end. I know caring for someone isn't about whether they deserve it. It's about who we are. And you're someone who can't stand to see anybody suffering. That's not a weakness, that's something special." Eleanor started crying. Not sad tears, tears of relief, relief that finally someone got it. "Mr. Henry, I don't know what to do anymore. My son's right about some things. I can't keep this up alone much longer, but I can't just abandon Vincent either." "Then don't abandon him. We'll take care of him together." We worked it all out right there over coffee at her kitchen table. I'd help with what I could. My pension's a bit better than hers, and I don't have many expenses living alone. We'd split the caregiving too. Eleanor would take Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. I'd handle Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. Sundays we'd figure out as we went. Wasn't going to be easy. Couldn't afford professional care, that was way beyond our means, but we could manage the basics: medicine, supplies, food, and we could give him what's hardest to come by: human company. And that's how the strangest and most meaningful time of my later years began. Taking care of Vincent was like caring for a ghost. He barely spoke, barely moved, barely responded. The stroke had taken away most of who he used to be. But in his eyes, during his clearer moments, you could see he knew who Eleanor was. More than that, you could see he remembered what he'd done. Those first few weeks, I felt this buried anger, mad at being there, wasting my time on a man who'd hurt Eleanor so badly. Mad about spending my money on medicine for someone who didn't deserve it. Mad about giving up my Saturdays to help wash a man who'd once been capable of walking out on his own family. But the anger faded gradually. Faded because when you care for someone, even someone who doesn't deserve it, you start seeing the human part of them. Vincent was a frightened, lonely man who needed help with everything. A man who'd made terrible choices and was paying for them in the worst way possible. And Eleanor was something to behold. Took care of him with the same dedication she'd show anybody. No bitterness, no complaints, no dirty looks, just had this compassion I was still trying to wrap my head around. Once I asked her, "Eleanor, how do you manage it, after everything he put you through?" She looked at me with those tired but peaceful eyes. "Mr. Henry, I don't do this for him. I do it for me, so I can look at myself in the mirror each morning, so I can sleep at night. It's not about him deserving it. It's about who I am." And I got it. Not completely, but I got it. Problem was, Michael found out about our arrangement. Was on a Saturday in May. He'd decided to surprise his mother with a visit, got to her house and nobody was home, started worrying, asked around the neighborhood. Patterson from the corner said she'd seen Eleanor heading out with that gentleman with the walking cane early that morning. When we got back, there he was on the front porch, waiting, with a look that spelled trouble. "Mom, now you're dragging other people into this insanity?" Eleanor tried to explain, but Michael was beside himself. Said he was going to sue us for elder abuse, that he'd contact the authorities, wouldn't let his mother get manipulated. That's when I lost my cool. "Son, with all due respect, you don't understand what's happening here." "Oh, I don't, and you do. You know my family's history? Know what this man did to my mother?" "I do know. And I also know your mother's a woman who can't stand to see anyone suffer. That's not a character flaw, that's character, period. And if you can't see that, the problem's not with her." Things got heated fast. Michael called me a vulture, said I was sticking my nose where it didn't belong. I told him I was doing what felt right, and if he couldn't recognize his own mother's goodness, then I could. Eleanor was caught between us, trying to calm everybody down. Finally, she said something that shut us both up. "Michael, I understand you're angry. I get that you can't forgive Vincent. Truth is, I haven't forgiven him either, but forgiving and caring are two different things. I care for him because it's what I need to do to live with myself. This isn't about him, it's about me." Michael went quiet for a long moment. Then he shook his head and said, "Mum, you're right about one thing. You're free to do whatever you want, but I don't agree with it, won't support it, and don't want to hear about it anymore." He left without saying goodbye. Eleanor was devastated. Next few days, Michael didn't show up. Didn't call, didn't send word, nothing. Eleanor worried, but didn't want to reach out. Said he needed time to think things through. I figured he might try something against us. Get a lawyer, call social services, that kind of thing. But nothing happened. Maybe deep down he knew his mother was right. Maybe he talked to someone and found out that a competent elderly person has the right to make their own decisions. Or maybe in the quiet of his own house, he was slowly starting to understand what his mother was trying to tell him. Time kept moving. May turned to June, June to July. Eleanor and I kept up our routine. Her on Mondays, Wednesdays and Fridays, me on Tuesdays, Thursdays and Saturdays. Sundays we'd alternate or go together when one of us was extra tired. Vincent kept getting weaker, ate less, slept more, spoke even less than before. But in those last days of July, he started staying awake longer, like his body was making one final push. It was on a Tuesday, August 1st, when he died. I was there feeding him dinner, real thin soup, about all he could manage to swallow. Eleanor had gone to pick up medicine and would be back soon. Vincent was more alert than usual, looking at me with those sunken eyes. All of a sudden, he grabbed my hand, thin, cold fingers, but still strong enough to squeeze. "Thank you," he whispered. Hard to make out, but that's what he said. Eleanor got back a few minutes later and found us like that. Vincent holding my hand, looking at me with an expression I'd never seen before. When he spotted Eleanor, he let go of my hand and reached for hers. "Eleanor," he said, struggling with each word. "I'm sorry." Eleanor took his hand, but didn't say anything. Just sat there quietly until he drifted off to sleep. He passed during the night, peacefully. Eleanor was holding one hand, I had the other. Wasn't a hard death. Was peaceful, with people who cared nearby, with dignity. The funeral was small the next day, almost empty. A few curious neighbors, 2 or 3 old acquaintances. Eleanor sat in the back of the funeral home, quiet and dignified. I sat beside her. Around mid-afternoon, Michael showed up. He walked in slowly, looked at the casket, stood there a while, then came over to where we were sitting. Didn't say anything at first, just stood there looking awkward. Finally, he crouched down and whispered in his mother's ear, "Mum, I still don't get all of it, but I respect who you are." Eleanor took her son's hand and cried. Not sad tears, tears of relief. Relief to have her boy back, to know he'd understood something, even if not everything. After the burial, we walked home slowly. Eleanor was tired, but had this peace on her face I hadn't seen in months. "Mr. Henry, thank you. Thank you for not letting me go through this alone." "Eleanor, thank you for showing me we can still matter, even at our age." We got to our street, and she invited me for coffee. Sat on her front porch watching the sunset, each lost in our own thoughts. "You know, Mr. Henry, Never thought at 68 I'd discover I still had so much to give. Well, Eleanor, and I never thought some midnight mystery would turn my whole life around. We sat quietly, sipping coffee, listening to birds heading home to roost. Think we did right? She asked. Think we did what needed doing, and that's plenty. Today, 5 months later, we still have coffee on that porch. Became real friends, the kind that happens when two people go through something meaningful together. Eleanor sleeps better now, and I found out that caring for someone gave my life new purpose. Michael's back to visiting his mother. Comes every Sunday like always. Now he says hello to me too, asks how I'm doing, sometimes stays for coffee with us. Think he figured out his mother needs friends, and I'm a real friend. Sometimes we talk about Vincent, not with sadness, but with the peace that comes from doing what you had to do. Eleanor says she doesn't regret any of it, that sleeping peacefully is worth whatever it cost. I agree completely. Found out there are lots of ways to love, and compassion is one of them. Learned it's never too late to make a difference in someone's life, even when that someone doesn't deserve your help. Discovered that sometimes the hardest thing you can do is care for people who've hurt you. And you, listening to me right now, ever been through something like this? Ever had to choose between what's easy and what's right? Ever felt that ache of watching someone suffer, even someone who made you suffer? Don't know where you're hearing this, at home, at work, on the bus. But if you've stuck with me this far, it's because somehow my story touched something in you. And if it did, maybe it's because you've got someone who needs forgiving too, or because you've felt alone, or because you've learned that doing good doesn't have to make sense to everybody else. Life really is strange. Sometimes you find purpose in the most unexpected places. Sometimes you learn about love by caring for those who broke your heart. Sometimes you discover that courage isn't about being strong, it's about being human. Now tell me, ever felt that emptiness of not knowing what you're here for? Ever had to choose between what the world expects and what your heart knows is right? Drop a comment below, share your story. Sometimes we need to know we're not walking this road alone. Sometimes we need to share the weight we're carrying. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, someone who needs to know it's never too late to start over, to care, to be human, share this story. Because sometimes one story can change a life, and sometimes changing one life changes everything. I'm Henry, 73 years old now, and this was the story of how I learned that my biggest escape wasn't from sleeplessness. It was from not caring. Take care, and until next time. Now tell me, ever felt like you were running from yourself? Ever discovered that sometimes caring for those who hurt us is the only way to heal our own hearts?